Welcome to Veterans in Transition, where we promote the veteran community. Each week we travel around the region highlighting veteran-related news, issues, and events. In this episode, we're on location at the Army-Navy Club in Arlington, Virginia, where Tom Deierlein was the featured speaker, sharing his lessons learned about entrepreneurship. Tom is a former U.S. Army Major and Operation Iraqi Freedom vet and a Bronze Star and Purple Heart recipient. He is now the CEO of ThunderCat Technology.
So what do Sam Walton, Dave Thomas, Harry Gordy, Fred Smith, and Charles Walgreen have in common? Well, we all know why we're here. It's veterans in business, right? So the founders of Walmart, AOL, Wendy's, who doesn't love Wendy's, Motown Records, Walgreens, FedEx, they were all veterans that went on to found a business after their service to the nation. So I don't care whether you've served 20 plus years or just a couple, whether you've had multiple combat tours or just, or none. Trust me when I tell you, if you are a veteran, you have what it takes to not only survive, but thrive in the business world. And that includes going out on your own. So this morning I'd like to do three things. The first thing is I want to talk a little bit about veterans in business, and a little more specifically about veteran entrepreneurs and small business owners. The second, I'd like to share a little bit about my own personal journey. And then last, I'd like to talk about what I think are the three things that make veterans perfect for entrepreneurship and small business ownership. So as mentioned, I'm a combat wounded veteran and I'm a small business owner. And a few years ago, I got a call from the Galveston, Texas Small Business Development Center. And they were throwing a conference and they wanted me to come down and be a keynote. And I said, why are you calling a New Yorker with a business in Virginia to come down to Texas to talk about entrepreneurship? And she said, you know, it's quite simple. I've been at this for a decade and I've done extensive research. Veteran-owned businesses are 7 times more likely to be successful. 7 times more likely. And she says, well, if I have a veteran keynote, I figure that'll drive more veterans to attend the conference, and hopefully they'll be encouraged to start their business. So where are my bankers in the room? Put your hands up, bankers. Where are my money folks? 7 times more likely to be successful. So take that statistic directly from me to your risk department. Let's get those lines of credits and early funding lines open. So maybe you know these interesting stories, and at the chance of being a little redundant, because some of these numbers were on the website when you register, but I do want to share them because they are impressive. Veterans own 3.7 million American small businesses. That's 13.5% of all non-farm small businesses, according to the SBA. And that's a much higher percentage than any other demographic. And in fact, if you think about it, we make up about 6% of the working population, but 13.5% of the small businesses. We're twice as likely to be a successful small business owner. Bankers, twice as likely to be successful small business owners. These businesses employ 5.8 million. Let's round that up. Let's call it 6 million. Americans. They pay wages in excess of $210 million, and they generate $1.7 trillion to the GDP. We have what it takes. But it's not just small businesses as well. In 1980, 59% of large publicly held companies were run by a CEO that had military experience. By 2006, that number was a mere 8%. And so Korn Ferry International decided to do a study, and they said, well, let's take a look at these. Obviously, we're looking at what's happening here. And they studied that 8% compared to their other peers. And it turned out that those 8% of large publicly held companies outperformed the S&P 500 by 20%. So small businesses, large business, veterans in business is a good thing. Here's a few companies that we all know and probably buy something from at least one of them each and every day. And sometime either currently or in the past few years was run by a military veteran. 7-Eleven, General Motors, J&J, that's where I started my career, Lockheed Martin, Verizon. Bob McDonald is the Secretary of the VA. What was his job before that? CEO of the largest consumer packaged goods company in the world. So, and actually we made a reference to what happened after the war, and I'll say the same thing, World War II. And we talk about America's greatest generation. These folks that grew up in the Depression, went off to fight a war, and then when they returned, they built America into the great super economic power it is today. That's why they're America's greatest generation. And a very large portion of those folks were veterans. A few years ago, I was given the opportunity to speak to a group of the Association of Veteran Entrepreneurs out in Colorado, and I cut and pasted this description, a passage, a definition of what is an entrepreneur. I tried desperately last night and Googled to source it, so I wasn't able to, but this is not my own definition, but I would like to read what is an entrepreneur. An entrepreneur is someone who takes on the risk of operating a new business. An entrepreneur is a risk taker, a leader, an organizer, and one who isn't afraid to take on uncertainties. An entrepreneur has the drive, confidence, and determination to succeed. An entrepreneur does not allow others to stand in their way when they try to achieve their goals. They have a desire to achieve, are hardworking, and accept responsibility. Entrepreneurs use their drive and determination to achieve goals and ambitions. Entrepreneurs didn't let anything stop them, but kept on going even if someone said they couldn't succeed. They saw success in their future and they strived to achieve it. Entrepreneurs saw their projects through the end and never gave up on themselves. They expressed confidence in their abilities as well as in their projects. Entrepreneurs' determination, optimism, and spirit are inspirational. I'm going to replace one word. I'm going to replace the word entrepreneur with veteran. A veteran is a risk taker, a leader, an organizer. A vet has the drive, confidence, and determination. A veteran does not allow others to stand in their way. Veterans use drive and determination to achieve goals and ambitions. Veterans didn't let anything stop them, but kept on going. They saw success in their future and strived to achieve it. Veterans see their missions through the end and never give up on themselves. Veterans' determination, optimism, and spirit are inspirational. Kind of crazy, right? It reads the same way. All these characteristics that make successful entrepreneurs, veterans have. There was nothing unnatural in the difference between those two readings of that same passage. So if you are a veteran here this morning and wondering whether you should start your own business, the answer is yes. I'm going to caution you a little later. The answer is yes. So what I want to do next is talk a little bit about my own journey and how I ended up here today. When I was 13 years old, I decided I want to go to West Point. My parents thought, oh, that's cute. They deny it, right, because my parents are super supportive, and they were like, where else are you applying, son? But I did sneak in, and I graduated in 1989. About 2 weeks after I got into the military, I decided I wanted to be infantry, Airborne Ranger. It took me 3 tries to get through, which is a whole nother presentation altogether, but I did finally make it through Ranger School in July of 1990. I spent time in the Berlin Brigade doing classic assignments. I was a platoon leader. I actually knocked off some pieces of the Berlin Wall myself. It was after the fall, but I took a sledgehammer to a piece of the wall, which is kind of cool. Platoon leader, mortar platoon leader, and operations. And then I got out. And I went into something that's called the Individual Ready Reserve. The Individual Ready Reserve, I wasn't like in the National Guard. I wasn't drilling once a month or 2 weeks during the summer. Like, I didn't touch a weapon or put on a uniform for 12 years. And during that time, I had a sales and sales management career. I started off at Johnson & Johnson. I figured, mailroom to boardroom, right? Build my career the way that my parents did. And at the time, J&J was the most admired company in America. I thought, man, this is just perfect. But slowly but surely, I found myself over the course of that time going to smaller and smaller companies until, You know, eventually in the late 90s, I rode the first dot-com boom. I was the 63rd employee at a dot-com that rose up and went public. My next startup I was the 7th employee. We grew it to 125 and sold it. And that was the company Dynamic Logic that was mentioned. And then we sold that company to WPP, which is one of the top 3 marketing holding firms in the world, in 2005. Now let's go back to that IRR. So I left the military in 1993. In 2005, 12 years later, I got a welcome back letter. Almost an insistence that I come on back for a little bit. I was called back to active duty for a year and a half. So I went down to Fort Jackson for 10 days of welcome back training, and then I went to Fort Bragg, and I went to the JFK Special Warfare School where I became a civil affairs officer. So even though I was special ops, I'm like, you know, not a badass. I don't even play one on TV. Like, I wasn't kicking down doors and chasing bad guys. I was actually doing the economic development, or what we're classically calling reconstruction. So I was doing economic development. We were building schools and hospitals and infrastructure. The electrical power network was still only getting about 2 hours a day in Baghdad. I was an executive coach for the newly elected government. I literally had Robert's Rules of Orders translated into Arabic. It was interesting that the different societies and trying to figure out how that all worked, and it was an interesting time to be in Iraq trying to help build a country. In September of 2006, I was shot by a sniper. The round came in over my iliac crest, shattered my pelvis, shattered the sacrum, which is the base of my spine. So I spent the next 8 months up the road at Walter Reed, and then down at the James A. Haley VA in Tampa, the Polytrauma Spinal Cord Center. Anyone who's here from the VA hospital? Thank you, sir. A lot of bad press lately, but Walter Reed and the VA took great care of me, and they continue to take great care of me today. After that, I returned to the business world. And about a year and a half after I retired, we started ThunderCat technology. My call sign in Baghdad was ThunderCat 6. You know, we got there and we all decided we were going to take on feline names, right? So all the cool ones got quickly taken: lion, tiger, panther, jaguar. I was like, what am I going to be, Ocelot 6? So my driver came to me that night and he said, what about ThunderCat? And I said, yeah, ThunderCat. And then I went on the web and I saw the logo of ThunderCat, and I'm like, that's it. So we stenciled that on our Humvees. The next day we rolled out it as Team ThunderCat. Little did I know it's like a cheesy 80s cartoon. I hadn't ever seen the cartoon, you know, and now here I am a decade later still living with the ThunderCat name, and people make references, and I'm like, I don't know what that means. So ThunderCat Technology, as we mentioned, we sell data center solutions, data storage, cyber, networking, applications, and 99% of our business is with the federal government. We do have a handful of commercial clients, but really we do Fed. For the veterans that are thinking about starting their own business, maybe a franchise. You don't have to do anything different. Like if I threw a stick from this room, trust me, I'd hit 10 other VARs. You know, it's not a unique business model. We think we do it a little better. But if you're thinking about a business, it doesn't mean like you have to have an aha moment while you're shampooing in the shower about some kind of need. You can look at an existing business model and just execute on it better. Franchisors love veterans. Once again, I mentioned there are 10,000s of value-added resellers or systems integrators out in the United States. So the business model that we chose is not unique. We do have an all-star only model, and I recommend anyone that's going to do B2G to make sure that someone early on your team has experience selling in the public sector, because it's a very different kind of animal. We're unique in that we sell across all three. Some people focus on DoD or civilian or intel. We sort of sell across all of those. A few of the awards that we were given were mentioned, and fast growth, but there are two that I'm the most proud of. The first is Tech Elite 250. Tech Elite 250 we've gotten 2 years in a row, and in order to get that award, you actually have to have expertise across a number of disciplines. And if you're supposed to be an objective third-party person recommending to someone technology that they need, you should probably know about a lot of those different technologies and how they work, not just good at storage or cyber or networking. And so I'm quite proud that my sales engineers and sales professionals have gone out and studied and gotten those certifications from our partners. The second one that I'm the most proud of is that we've spent 3 years in a row on the best places to work in Virginia. We are 8 years old, we're 52 folks. We've only had 57 employees in our history, and only 2 of those left by choice. We like to think this is a place where people come and they want to stay and they want to spend a career at. And that's where we take pride, because I sell other people's stuff. We don't invent anything, we don't make anything, we don't manufacture anything. Our people are the brand. Most people don't even know who Tom Deierlein is. You folks will now, because I spoke at this conference, but to most people, Dave or Shaheen or Karen, they're the folks that are the face of ThunderCat technology. So it's very important that we hire the right people and that they understand our purpose. If you walk into our headquarters in Reston, this is in bold print on the wall as you walk in, so you cannot misunderstand our purpose. I talked about technologies and data centers and all of this, but the purpose of ThunderCat technology is to make the United States a better and safer place for all Americans. Now, if you pulled any of the 52 employees in and asked them what the purpose of ThunderCat technology is, they would know that purpose and they embrace that purpose. So yeah, we sell enabling technologies, but our purpose is to make the United States a better and safer place for all Americans. There's a lot of lists and different reasons that people want to hire veterans, but I think there's really 3 reasons that I believe that make veterans uniquely qualified to be successful in business and to be uniquely successful as entrepreneurs or small business owners. Recently, the Washington think tank, Center for New American Security, came out with 10 reasons, and one of those was good PR, okay? But like teamwork skills, character, they're drug-free, they're loyal, they're effective, proven success. But to me, I think it comes down to 3 things. 1, leadership. 2, resilience. And 3, adaptability or flexibility. The first one is leadership. Pew Research recently came out with a study. What % of Americans do you think actually want to manage another person? What percentage of Americans do you think raised their hand and said, I would like to lead or manage someone else? 15. What? Wow, those are even lower than I was shocked at 34%. Those numbers are low. But only 1 out of 3 people actually wants to lead someone else. When I was in the military, from the very beginning, you're taught about leadership. Yeah, you start off as a follower, but if there were 2 privates scrubbing the toilet, one of those privates was in charge of scrubbing the toilets. If there were 2 privates raking leaves, guess what? One of them was in charge of the raking leaves detail. You're taught leadership as an early point. In 1947, the United States Army came out with 11 principles of leadership. 1947, so almost 70 years ago. If you go to boot camp tomorrow, you will be taught those same 11 principles, almost 70 years later. And that's how I try to lead. And so I'll read those very quickly. For those in the military, I apologize. You could probably quote these as quick as I can. Know yourself and seek self-improvement. Be tactically and technically proficient. Seek responsibility and take responsibility for your actions. Set the example. Know your people and look out for their welfare. Keep your people informed. Ensure that the task is understood, supervised, and accomplished. Develop a sense of responsibility among your people. Train your people as a team. Make sound and timely decisions. And employ your work in accordance with its capabilities. I try to live by those principles each and every day. The second thing is persistence and resilience. I'm a big lover of quotes, all thing quotes. And this is my all-time favorite quote. Nothing in this world can take the place of persistence. Talent will not. Nothing is more common than unsuccessful people with talent. Genius will not. Unrewarded genius is almost a proverb. Education will not. The world is full of educated derelicts. Persistence and determination alone are omnipotent. Calvin Coolidge. There's a grit scale, and the book is coming out in May. There's a PhD up at UPenn that has been studying resilience and persistence, and she's developed something called the grit scale. And it's actually the #1 determinant of uber successful people. More than IQ, more than EQ. She studied people entering West Point and used it to determine who would make it, who wouldn't. She's done the same with Navy SEAL classes. She studied spelling bee nationalists and looks at the characteristics, and it turns out that it's grit. You know, when you think about being in the military, it's not a job, it's a profession, it's a calling, and it's not about the money, right? And the same thing with entrepreneurship. If you're doing it because you think you're going to be wealthy or successful, okay, but you have to have that passion and want to make a difference and be part of something that's bigger than yourself. It's not about the money, and that way the military and entrepreneurship are also similar. The last one is always a little bit of a surprise. I say adaptability. People are like, what, the military, flexible, right? Because Hollywood did the military a great disservice. They got, like regimented and flexible, and the general sends the orders to the privates. Okay, look, we have a hierarchy, and there is a chain of command, but there's not a more adaptable, flexible creature on the planet than military personnel. They go in all kinds of environments, in non-artificial environments. You figure out pretty quick whether you win or lost, right? These folks are getting things done. So when we talk about Darwin and he talks about the survival of the fittest, everyone has misinterpreted that over the years to what? Strongest. It's not the strongest. It's those that can most quickly adapt, show flexibility to the changing environment, and that's what an entrepreneur does. I'll skip I'm running a little time. So, one caveat in regard to flexibility, you may not be flexible on integrity. It's always worth noting, like, you should be flexible, you should adapt, but do never, never, never sacrifice your integrity. So here's some unsolicited advice. I'm wrapping up. Sorry, I know I'm running a little long. It's a calculated risk, right? It's not all unicorns and rainbows and ice cream. Everyone thinks small business ownership, they see the news, or you hear about the success stories, and too much about the success stories. So make sure you know what you're getting yourself into. I'm a big believer in the rule of twos, right? Halve the revenue and double your costs. If you still have a business, think about proceeding. Or 2 years. Can you go 2 years without income? If not, maybe start it on the side, keep your job, but make sure you know what you're getting yourself into. Resources. Look at all the resources that are in this room. And it's all these nonprofits. I work with Vet to CEO. There's all these MBA programs now, or 6, 12-week MBA boot camps for veterans. All these different resources, not just on days like this, but each and every day. And by the way, your first stop should be the SBA. And no, they're not paying me to say that. They have a lot of great resources to help veterans and small business owners. Here's my call to action. I saw a disturbing survey 2 days ago. It was very upsetting to me. Not as much to some of my Facebook friends, which I was surprised. YouGov survey in January of this year surveyed voters under 30. And there were more, 43%, that had a higher opinion of socialism than capitalism. 32% were in favor of capitalism. 43% were in favor of socialism. So to the veterans in this room that either own a business or you're thinking about starting a business, now is the time for us to step up and lead this economy. Follow the example of the greatest generation. And let's go out there and build companies and create jobs and show people what good capitalism looks like. We can't have the younger generation thinking that socialism is better than capitalism, and that's our call to action. We need to change the face of capitalism to one of positive integrity, building the economy, making the American lives better. So about half my Facebook friends were like, yeah, I get it. I was like, oh man, that's scary. I thought that everyone would be outraged that 43% were in favor of socialism, so I deleted my post. So in closing, I am not special. I know that I'm standing up here, but it was only because I knew Karen and she gave me this opportunity. Any one of you could be speaking today. I am not special. Even ask my mom, like, I'm one of 9 kids. She's like, that kid's not special. I got 8 others just like him. Second, this is something that I'm obviously passionate about, have studied. I've spoken before to groups of veterans and veterans. So I've curated a lot of articles, and I think I've picked out some of the best advice, and those are on my LinkedIn profile. My last name is Deierlein, Tom Deierlein on LinkedIn. Go see those articles. There's one on veterans in business, and there's one in veteran entrepreneurs. So please, if you're a veteran that's looking to give content to a friend asking for advice, or you yourself just are looking to think through how your military skills translate to business, these are a set of great articles. Entrepreneur, Inc., Forbes, CNN Money, all good ones. All my friends, all my family will tell you, I am not special. If I can do this, trust me, you can do this. Thank you all very much.
That's all for this edition of Veterans in Transition. We ask that you like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter and Instagram. And remember, we all have a story to tell. Until next time.
People don't realize that getting things done is a skill. There's plenty of people that struggle with projects or struggle with seeing things through. Military folks don't struggle with that as much, the leadership component. So giving them sort of that confidence. And the last thing I do when I'm mentoring them is I say to them, what do you want to do? If you've got a retirement check showing up every month and you've got health care, you're never going to be homeless.